Hey there, this is Darren LaCroix. I know right now in your life, you either have this huge challenge or you've got this big dream and maybe you're not happy with how your life is right now. So what do you do to change that? So you're about to see one of my presentations where I go really deep and tell some stories and show you how I changed my life to get what I wanted and make this incredible challenge turn into a reality. Check it out.
We all have access to the same information. We all can read the same books. We all can find mentors. Why are our outcomes so radically different? Why do some people grow faster than others? Why do some people grow rapidly while others struggle? It just doesn't seem fair. In business, some thrive, some barely stay alive. Why do a few people succeed and others remain in mediocrity despite huge effort? You're about to find out what the X factor is and how you can get it. In 1992, Darren LaCroix bombed miserably in a Boston comedy club. It was bad. It was horrible. The headlining comedian that night told him, "Hey, keep your day job." With such a horrendous start, there seemed to be no obvious logical reason why, 9 years later, Darren outspoke 25,000 contestants from 14 countries to become the world champion of public speaking. Well, here's a clue. Darren had many mentors and many heroes along the way. They filled him with insights and a new perspective, and he was a sponge. Are you a sponge? What's really filling you? Please welcome Darren LaCroix.
Who is your hero's hero? Did you ever consider that? Who is your hero's hero? Who inspired the person who inspired you? Who mentored the person who mentored you? Who is your hero's hero? My hero, Rudy Ruettiger. Raise your hand if you've seen the movie Rudy. That's my favorite movie ever. Because when I first started to try to become a comedian, I was told, that's not for you, Darren. You're not funny, you're not talented, you have no stage presence. So if you don't know the story, Rudy was too small to play for Notre Dame football, but he dreamed of playing football for Notre Dame. But he wasn't even smart enough to get in the school. I was so inspired by the character. Whether or not you like sports, it's an inspiring true life story. So when I moved here to Las Vegas, I put it on my bucket list that I wanted to meet Rudy. So I jumped online. I wanted to see what state Rudy Ruettiger lived in. I wanted to meet the man. That inspired me. Well, jumping online, I was shocked to find out he had an office 1 mile from my house in Henderson, Nevada. My gosh, you're kidding me. So I called his office. I emailed. Nothing. But if you know the Rudy story, that never stopped him, so it wasn't going to stop me. I started asking around if anybody knew Rudy. I wanted to meet Rudy. A friend of mine, Judy Morio, introduced me to a friend of Rudy's, and I got to have lunch with Rudy. The district, Henderson, Nevada, the Cheesecake Factory. I'll never forget it. I was like a little kid having lunch with Santa Claus. It's Rudy, it's Rudy. I was so pumped. But actually, when I heard his story, I was even more inspired. Did you know that after graduating Notre Dame, when Rudy was sitting in the audience at work, they brought in a motivational speaker. And the speaker asked a question. And when Rudy listened, he realized, that's what I want to do for a living. I want to inspire and motivate people. So he asked the speaker after the presentation, and the speaker asked him a question. said, "Why should anyone listen to you? What have you done? What have you lived that we should listen to you?" And Rudy thought, well, I graduated from Notre Dame, but so haven't thousands of people. But the more he reflected on his story, the more he realized that he had an inspiring story, even though he only played football for 27 seconds in one game. Well, Rudy's hero was Sylvester Stallone. And Sylvester Stallone, if you don't know that story, he wrote the script to Rocky. And he passed it around to movie companies, and no one wanted to well, they wanted the movie, but they didn't want Sylvester Stallone. He was an unknown. But he persisted. So Rudy, inspired by his mentor, his hero, he thought, well, what if they made a movie about my story? Then it would be easy to become a speaker. Everyone would know. By the way, it worked for him, not a great marketing plan. I'm just saying. But the story that Rudy told me that inspired me most was actually started with his daughter, Jessica. She had sung in the chorus and won an award with the privilege of singing the national anthem at a Lakers game. So Rudy took his daughter, Jessica, to the game. They were there in the arena 2 hours early. The only other person in the theater at that moment, Kobe Bryant. Those of you non-sports fans, he's one of the greatest basketball players to ever live. I'll clue you in. He was practicing shooting baskets. Rudy saw him, turned to his daughter and said, "Do you want to meet Kobe Bryant?" Well, of course, his daughter was excited. He's a celebrity. She's singing at the Lakers game. So as soon as Rudy and his daughter Jessica started moving towards Kobe, security stopped them. But that doesn't stop Rudy. He yelled, "Hey, Kobe, it's Rudy." Kobe stopped. "Ruettiger?" "Yeah." Kobe walked over to Rudy and told him that when he was playing amateur basketball in Europe, he listened to the story of Rudy over and over again. He watched the movie over and over and over again. He thought that if a man with no talent could work that hard and accomplish what he did, imagine if a man with talent worked that hard, what could he accomplish? He turned to Rudy, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "I'm here 2 hours early because of you." Wow. A man who played college football for 27 seconds inspired Kobe Bryant. Are you kidding me? Who can you and I inspire? That's the movie Rudy, if you haven't seen it, and that was taken at the Cheesecake Factory. I verified my story, and there was actually an article in ESPN, on the ESPN website, about what happened that day. I got the story from Rudy, so it's a little different, but check it out. But what I loved at the end of the article, Kobe Bryant said, as a staff member from the Lakers was walking by, he stopped the staff member, pointed to Rudy, and he said, "You want to meet the person who's had the biggest influence in my life? That's Rudy, the real Rudy Ruettiger." Wow. You and I can be heroes to heroes. You don't have to have some major accomplishment. You just have to help people. Alan Weiss. When I first came into speaking and comedy, I became a sponge. I listened to the people who were at the top. I wanted to align my thoughts with their thoughts, to create the habits that they created to get the results that they got. One of the biggest mistakes you and I can make is by sponging from someone who's just a half a step ahead of us. Alan was brilliant, and in the New England Speakers Association, where I was a member early on, anytime Alan was speaking. In fact, to this day, someone said to me, "Alan's coming to do a seminar in Las Vegas next week." And I said, "Awesome, that's it, I'm there." Somebody else said, "Well, but what's he talking about?" I'm like, "Who cares? It's Alan." See, I need to remember myself how I was back then, because I need to keep sponging. One of my other mentors, Dave Fitzgerald, he was an amazing man and one of my comedy mentors. I took every class that I could early in my comedy career, and he was one of the ones that I met early on because I took his nightlife class about how to write stand-up comedy. He was my hero, not because of what he did on stage, as amazing as he was, but the person he was off stage. What do people think of you off stage? That's often more important. We want to know the real you. Well, Dave, when he was afflicted by cancer, he brought cancer. Originally, he started off speaking in AA. He was very funny telling his story, telling his drunkalogue. And he could impact people because of his humor. He said, Darren, that early on, I could see guys in the back of the room that were sent by the judge, crossing their arms, forced to go to AA meetings. He said, I could get them to uncross their arms with my funniness. However, the story was where the power was. Well, because he was so funny, people encouraged him to be a comedian, and from comedy, he ended up changing another step you'll hear about later. But when he was afflicted by cancer, I remember I was here when one of the AA friends of his came up to him, and they said, Dave, it's not fair that you would be afflicted by cancer. That's not fair. You cleaned your life up. You're one of the good guys. You deserve not to have that happen. Dave's response with his wisdom was, why not me? Thank God I cleaned up my life so I could be healthy enough to fight this. What an amazing attitude. Be aware of the people you're learning from on stage and off stage. My first question for you is, what are you sponging? Ed talked about it earlier, but talked about clearing. See, if you're a sponge and you're full and you know everything, or let's just say you want to get to another level in your life, you and I have to consider this. If you want to learn something new, what do you need to let go of? What do you need to let go of so that you can learn more? Let's have these bowls represent, this is negative, the past, the bad from the past. And this one represents wisdom. This is where we're going. This is what we want if we truly want to help people or make a change in the world. What are you sponging? Who are you listening to? Because the people around you affect you, on stage and off stage. I love this quote by Jim Rohn, amazing speaker. He actually, Tony Robbins learned from Jim Rohn. He said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Now, you've probably heard that before, and maybe you like that quote, but he wasn't the originator. It was actually in an older book. In the Bible, Proverbs. By the way, Proverbs, even if you don't read or you're not a believer, check it out. Proverbs is the motivational quote book from ancient history. But Proverbs says, whoever walks with the wise become wise, but the companion of fools suffers harm. It also said, bad company corrupts good character. In fact, there's a story in history about King Solomon. King Solomon was given wisdom, and he was actually one of the wisest kings in the world. And other kings came from him to just hear him talk because he was so wise. He had all this purity. However, if you know the rest of the story, he had some wives that had a different value system, let's say. And even though he had this wisdom, he was spending time with people who were, again, coming from a different value system. And he was asked to do one thing, and he didn't do it because of the people he was spending too much time with. See, you and I can only give to our audience. This will represent our audience. We can only give to our audience what's inside of us. So if you and I want to affect the world, if we want to help our audience, we want to help even the 5 around us, even if they're not speakers or audience members, we need to do what Kobe did. Listen to the Rudy movie. Listen to the Rudy movie. Listen to the Rudy movie. When I first got started, all my friends, my high school buddies were saying, you can't do that. That's not for you. Well, I would have to almost flush out the negative, bad thinking. I would listen to motivational tapes to overwrite what I've heard my whole life. When I worked for Bose Corporation, I was a telemarketer as I pursued my dream of stand-up comedy and now speaking. And I remember one day when they told us they were changing the commission plan. Everything was changing. I was a little disappointed because I knew I wasn't going to earn quite as much. And I remember going to lunch. And while I was at lunch, my coworkers sat with me. And they were ripping. They were upset. And they were yapping the whole time. By the time lunch was over, I was ripping. And I'm the one who went to the boss and yelled at them. Why? Because they filled me up with the bad stuff. What are you sponging? You and I need to be aware of that. Everything around you affects you. The people around you affect you. I want you to ask yourself every moment of every day, what am I sponging? What am I sponging? What are you listening to in the car? Hey, music is great. It's awesome. It changes your mood. But I remember Brian Tracy said, look, you're losing out on valuable learning time where you could reinforce the good wisdom and flush out the old thinking. He said, if you're listening to music all the time, it's like chewing gum for the mind. It keeps you busy, but it doesn't really move you forward. Music has its place, don't get me wrong. When I moved to Las Vegas, I don't know about you, I am a Law and Order fan. I hear that sound, shunk, shunk, I'm pumped. I love that. And there's nothing wrong with watching an episode of TV that takes you away or you enjoy. However, when I moved here as an entrepreneur, I was spending all day working in my home. So in the background, I had Law and Order marathons going on. And by the end of the day, I wondered why, like, I'm all jacked up. I'm not happy. Why am I not happy? I'm a motivational speaker. My blood type is B positive. And if you're not aware, the subconscious is taking in everything you and I choose to be around. In fact, I had this bad habit that at night, I would wind down and I would have the TV on. And I would fall asleep to the TV. Well, guess what? All that was on TV still going in. I'm still sponging that. Where am I? Oh. I'm still sponging that. Even though I'm not even awake. What am I going to give to my audience? Still sponging. In fact, one morning I woke up and I owned an ab roller and a Jack LaLanne juicer. Yeah. Yeah, as you notice, I didn't do the Bosley thing, you know. Even the subconscious has its limits. What am I sponging? Ask yourself, what am I sponging? Second question, how are you sponging? How are you sponging? Not just what, but how. How do you look at that wisdom that's around you? How do you look at every moment of every day? A little of this, a little of this, a little more of this. But how are you sponging? Vince Antonucci, a great presenter and author here, one of my friends, he said, are you trying or are you training? And I don't know why, but it just struck me. I'm like, what do you mean? You see, trying, and there are a lot of speakers and experts trying to market themselves and trying to put on their own events and trying to be better speakers. But are you training? There's a difference. This is how Vince defined it, as I heard him say. He said, training is doing today what I can do today, so that tomorrow I can do what I can't do today. You got to think on that one. Training is doing today what I can do today, so that tomorrow I can do what I can't do today. Think about that. If I was told, or if I was offered $1 million to run a marathon tomorrow, I could try. But since I don't run, it ain't going to happen. I might make a few miles, but I ain't going to do 26. Yet, if I made a goal 6 months from now, today I could run a lap in my neighborhood. So tomorrow, maybe I could run 2. Maybe on the third day, I could write read an article or listen into an audio about someone who's never run before, what they need to know about starting to run. Hold my calls, I'm busy. But training is doing something today. What can you do today? You're here at this conference. That's awesome. That's doing something today. But what are you going to do with this on Monday? I'm worried about Monday because you're going to get jacked up by Sunday afternoon. You're going to be pumped. You're going to be excited. But that's not where your training starts. Your training starts later. I have a test called the Get the Book test. When I started in speaking, because I came to the stand-up world, even though I was an open mic or an amateur at best, I wasn't very good, but people came to me, I want to be funnier, I want to be funnier. So I said to people, well-meaning people, okay, here's what you need to do first. The book that you heard me talking about, Judy Carter book, Stand-Up Comedy, the book, you need to go get the book. Got it. I said, then come talk to me. 95% of the people I never hear from. The 5 people that do come back to me, first question is, did you get the book? Well, no, but I'm going to get, stop, shut up, don't waste my time. If I tell you, here's the book you need to do, you need to be a sponge, you need to be an intentional sponge. See, everyone is a sponge, but are you an intentional sponge? Are you aware? So if they haven't got the book, they're never going to do anything I tell them that's hard. That's a simple one. But now I don't waste my time, and I narrow it down to that one person who's hungry. 2 biggest problems in the speaking world: new speakers, emerging speakers, self-doubt. You don't believe in your story yet. You don't think you have a story. You see somebody who climbed a mountain, had to cut his arm off to save himself, and you're like, oh my gosh, what a great story. I need to go cut my arm off. No, you don't. Don't cut your arm off. You have a story inside you. Someone needs to hear it. Second biggest problem, ego. Once you start getting a little confidence, somebody asks for your autograph that first time, it's like so cool. You're like, oh man, I have made it. But you see, here's the problem. We have this thing called the ego bag. And we say we want to learn more. We put ourselves in the ego bag. We go to a seminar. I want to learn, I want to learn, I want to learn, I want to learn. Some of you, that hurt watching because you know I'm talking about you. Good. On your chair right now, you have a little plastic bag. Well, let me ask you this question first. Raise your hand if you want to look good on stage. Raise your hand. Let it go! It's not about you. That's the problem. Pick up your bag right now. Hold it open. And on 3, we're all going to say, it's not about me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's not about me. You just became a better speaker. Okay? Check this out. Check this out. Listen carefully. You reap what you soak. It's not exactly worded that way in the Bible. But and I want you to remember this. You're the conscious sponge. You're the intentional sponge. I want you to remember, you reap what you soak. You reap what you soak. Oh my gosh. I want you to get this. I want you to be more intentional. Who keeps you intentionally sponging? That's the important one. Who keeps you intentionally sponging? Maybe you have an accountability partner. You need one. We talked about this already, but you need one. Only tell the people who will keep you accountable. My high school buddies, I mention them in all my talks because they love me. They're great guys. But when I started sponging about what it took, I heard stage time, stage time, stage time. You want to be better? You got to get on stage. Any day you don't get on stage is a day that you don't grow. However, when I couldn't get stage time in Boston, I used to drive 2.5 hours to Portland, Maine to go on stage for 5 minutes for free and drive home and go to my day job the next morning. My high school buddies said, and I quote, they said, "You're stupid." Now I get to fly all over the world. I get to do what I love to do for a living. People from 14 countries came here to Vegas to listen. Now my friends look at me and they say I'm lucky. You're so lucky. Well, apparently, you can go from stupid to lucky. If anyone's ever called you stupid, keep going. You're on the right path. There's also, you need accountability because of the squirrel factor. The squirrel factor is, if you haven't seen the movie Up, a squirrel runs by. There's a squirrel. We have a goal, a squirrel. You need people to keep you accountable. Humans have an overactive justification gland. And without an accountability person, you're not going to have what you want. I want you to write it down now. You've learned some thoughts from Ed. I hope you have some ideas of what you can change in your life right now. This is your handout. We're not collecting this. It's just for you. But who do you need to spend less time with? Who do you need to maybe spend more time with? What could you do for an adjustment? I started reading a few verses every morning. And I don't like reading, but I forced myself to do it, and I've made some great changes in my life. So right now, write down what you need to change, what you need help changing. I'll wait. Okay? You're halfway there. You still need to do the important half, which is tell someone who will keep you accountable. You know your friends who will call you out when you're going down the wrong path. Bob and Roxanne, two buddies that changed my life, come to all of our boot camps. Roxanne wrote me a letter. She was afraid to write it. I read it. I put it away for several months, and then I read it again and made some adjustments because she was calling me out. Love that. You guys rock. When we did Get Paid to Speak 2, we had 15 people there. We had everybody post on our Facebook private page exactly what they were going to do and when they were going to do it by. Troy, where are you, Troy? Troy, you in the room? Troy Harrison. He's around here this weekend. He fulfilled a commitment to have his first teleseminar by the end of January. 21st century prospecting. He had never done a teleseminar. This was new to him. But he committed in a safe environment to people who are going to keep him sponging in the right direction, intentionally. This is what he posted, and I thank Troy for this. He said, if I hadn't committed to the post here, put the deadline out there, and the post was doing, and when I was doing it, I might not have done today's teleseminar. That would have been a mistake because 41 people paid to listen to me online for an hour. That's not bad. What I'm saying is the public accountability pushed me to do something I needed to do. Guess what we have? We have a Facebook private page for you for this event. What you wrote down, I encourage you, I plead to post it so we can help keep you accountable for where you want to go and the changes you say you need to make. Outside in the lobby, you're going to see this board, the commitment board. I want you to write it down there and put a date on it. What do you commit to doing? More time, less time? What do you commit to doing so all of us can see? Only to tell the people who will call you out. What am I sponging? See, the difference between a sponge and an intentional sponge? We're all sponges, but a sponge tries, an intentional sponge trains. A sponge listens once, an intentional sponge flushes out the bad thinking, the old thinking. Sponge has a secret dream. Intentional sponge shares the dream for accountability purposes, not for ego. Puts the toe in the water, dives into new ideas, goes with the flow, fights upstream for wisdom, sits back. Intentional sponge leans in, is content, is hungry, is unaware of the influence. But an intentional sponge is conscious of the influence that you're putting yourself around. Procrastinates an experience. An intentional sponge craves the experience because they know they're going to learn something in the training that's going to help them tomorrow. Rejects new thinking. An intentional sponge replaces old thinking. My buddy Dave Fitzgerald. He wrote this on a picture and gave it to me. You see, it's pretty cool what he wrote. I was an opening act for him at Laugh Lines in Framingham, Massachusetts. He was a headliner. He had just come back from LA. He was up for a big movie role. And he was so upset and so disgusted. He said, Darren, I'm so tired of this. I feel like the agents are pimping me out to parties just to try and get me gigs, get me on TV, get me in the movies. I'm tired of this. I want to go back and help people. Just like I did in AA. And I don't know what happened at that moment, but I became impassioned. I was just an opening act. I was still brand new to speaking. But because I was a sponge, I said, oh my gosh, David, tomorrow morning, Alan Weiss is speaking at the New England Speakers Association. You have to go there. He can help you. It's a great place. I know these people, and they will help you get where you want to go. I'm just getting started, but help them. Go and let them help you. You've got to meet Alan Weiss. I don't know exactly what I said, but I know he went the next morning. I know he met Alan. They became friends, and he ended up becoming a speaker. And when he was inflicted by cancer, he started speaking and bringing humor to patients and families. If you read it closely, I get choked up, but he said, Darren, you have affected my life in a way that cannot be measured. The direction I'm now going in is because of you. It's not because I was a great speaker. It's because I was a sponge and I knew something I could pass on to a hero that I could help. See, you and I are sponges. And you and I can make a difference in the world. Our audience, everyone in our audience is deluded. They have some wisdom, they have some old past and negative thinking. What you and I need to do is sponge. Because if you and I can sponge and bring more wisdom to the audience, you and I can change the world. Stop! Wait! No applause yet. Now, I could have made this program 2 hours long, but I think you got the point. Or did you? See, here's one of the big important things that you and I need to understand about changing our habits and taking our life to a new level, or our career to another level. We need to understand that we have to not just get our message and the new ideas into our conscious mind, we need to also, more importantly, get into our subconscious mind. And the two ways to do that, number one is repetition, 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 and number two is a story well told. I'm willing to believe that you will probably remember that Rudy Kobe Bryant story for a long time. Well, it's a story that impacted me and I transferred it to you. But I want these ideas to stick. So if you're a true sponge, if you really want to make impact and make some changes in your life, you've got to be that intentional sponge. So if you like this video, please forward it to a friend that it might be helpful to, or watch it again. If you give presentations and you want to be unforgettable, that's what I do, is I train people how to be unforgettable when they're giving a presentation. Or if you want to build your speaking business or build your business through speaking, I train people how to get paid to speak. So if that interests you, you want to know more about how to do that, check out stagetimeuniversity.com. Be a sponge.